Hello and most welcome to a lecture about what I call instability of meaning. What is that? Well, during all these videos and recordings we've mentioned some authors, philosophers that strand us into the understanding that exact same expression but completely different meanings. We have, for instance, Jacques Derrida, but also Arkady Plotnitsky, who make a very interesting synthesis between quantum mechanics and Derridian deconstruction. What is the zest in this? That is, the zest of this is an understanding that meaning is never stable. It's an instability of meaning. You do not have access, not even to what you say yourself. And I think especially in these days where artificial intelligence can copy written text, it makes for the illusion of the AI to have a sort of consciousness. I beg to differ. I think consciousness can only erupt when you have this instability of meaning, both when it comes to understanding and expressing. What led to this lecture is a friend of mine who asked or very shortly written question about Heidegger, and we were discussing das Mann versus Dasein, and we came to definitions, and I realized it wouldn't lead to any understanding to have a definition on Dasein or das Mann. And the reason is Heidegger himself is in very close zone to an understanding of this instability of meaning. And let me try this out. You could actually say that Dasein is the one who follow the lead, or I would say maybe not use Dasein, maybe authentic living, the authentic person. The authentic person could be said to be the one who do as everybody else, following lead, doing the conventions, being conformal, having all the prejudices that everyone else. In fact, Archie Bunker, if you remember him from the TV series, this limited small-minded person, at least as he is depicted, could be authentic. And this is a very important step in the understanding of Heidegger. This is one of the reasons that without instability of meaning, Heidegger doesn't make any sense at all. How could he? And you can add some explanations here to Archie Bunker and the example of him. I could recommend to have a look-see at Archie Bunker on the net. I do not think it's copyrighted anymore. I think that TV sitcom is more than 50 years old, or whatever the rules are. I don't know, sorry. But give it a go, Archie Bunker. Archie Bunker, aspect 1 could be said. You're not supposed to say something, I'll say something anyway. Archie Bunker is born this way. This is his way of being authentic. Would he be any other way, he would no longer be authentic. Although he's conformist, he's prejudiced, he's narrow-minded and so forth. That's one aspect. It's just a suggestion. Secondly, if you want to be authentic for some reason, you're free to want whatever you choose. it will not help at all to have instructions that authenticity means to not do what everyone else says or think or opinions. Secondly, authentic means to be true to your heart, do what you yourself chooses. Thirdly, authentic means to live a life to the utmost fullest. Those three aspects do not hold. It is simply not that easy. Why would Heidegger be easy? Well, he isn't, but this is not a reason for me to claim the instability of meaning. It is much older than that. Gödel, and I'd say Heraclitus, the Greek thinker, had a well understanding that meaning is incomplete. In this nonsensical sayings, according to Plato, of Heraclitus, for instance, that singularity comes out of plurality, and so forth. Fire and water is the same thing. Life and death completes each other. This is learned from Godel, as I've written here. Godel tried to make everything stable. And even within the stability, if there is such a thing, it doesn't exist according to Heidegger nor Derrida. But even there, in his closeted, closed mind, he found out that mean is simply not stable, because not a single thing in the universe can be both coherent and consistent at the same time. That thing has a meaning, it has consequences. And this is a helping tool for you who want to understand. If you are going the old routes and not taking care of the insight of Gödel, you be damned. You will be damned if you do, and you will also be damned if you don't. But you need to consider Gödel. He has a message to you, and that is of the instability of meaning. Another hint could be, there are very few people today, much less than there were at the time of Archie Bunker, maybe the late 70s, early 80s, that understand the instability of meaning. We have become more and more logocentric, to use a Derridian term. No, let me simplify that. We have become more gullible. And we no longer notice when we have discussions. And I think this is made worse, so much worse, by the frequent use of digital tools like I'm using now. But YouTube, doing things over the internet, video calls, ordinary calls that become much more frequent. It is slightly better to write something in handwriting, because the handwriting itself can actually give a clue of the true meaning. Handwriting is depicting the soul to a much greater extent. It will not give the total meaning, because nothing can give that. There is no end to the total meaning. We are now very far from the incredibly naive views on language that Bertrand Russell and Austin holds. They're actually quite ludicrous. I have to mention, Noam Chomsky, who now, I think recently, the last couple of weeks, has been indicted to have some connection to Epstein or something. Well, no matter what, there are more challenging things in his life, and that is the idea of a stable meaning. I don't even know what he means by that. And that all languages stem from one need some sort of weird stability that never existed in any sphere of the universe. So even if you, like Max Tegmark, the famed physicist, or Hugh Everett, believe in many worlds, there won't be any world, even if there is an infinity of them. There won't be a single world where meaning is stable, because stability in self doesn't make any sense. So this is very Derridian or quantum mechanic. Meaning itself is unstable. Wittgenstein, in his more pedagogical approach, would say that meaning has a very small use, and we are overusing it and thereby misunderstanding the language game. That's another way of expressing it. Maybe more pedagogical and easy to understand. Yeah, I really think that actually. Asking questions won't lead to understanding is one thing here, because definitions are so overly used today that there is no end to it. People constantly go into the internet, Wikipedia, Google, some digital dictionary, encyclopedia, thesaurus, you name it. For what reason? Meaning does not help by that. You can't define meaning. It's like Godel happened somewhere else. I think there is a joke in Blackadder when Blackadder says to Baldric, "Oh, I guess the Renaissance is something you think happened just to other people." I think most people think Godel happened to other people or didn't happen at all. Well, of course, most people haven't heard about Godels' incompleteness theorem, but it has incredible consequences all over the spectra, not in philosophical discussions only. I think it will have the least influence there. In everyday life, of course. There is a reason why Godel did not eat after this. He hardly ate. I think he starved himself to death. This is no minor thing. Stop going in your own footsteps. Go to some other thinking. Expand your thought. Well, what I say, my imperative here now, are also suffering from the instability of meaning, of course. There's no getting away. Oh no, what can we do? If meaning was stable, there would be no jokes in the world. Have you thought about that? It would mean that in the beginning, when you start hearing about the joke, the meaning will be the same as in the end. So you can sort of explain everything away. When we really understand how space and time works, it wouldn't be possible to move without an instability of meaning. Remember Zenon's paradox? Also that has a great message. If the world, for some absolutely ridiculous reason, would have adopted to the invention of X, Y, Z, perpendicular orthogonal directions, and space actually were that way. So for some mad reason, once human beings invented those directions, space adapted. Reality changed. No, of course, the orthogonal perpendicular direction of X, Y, Z, they don't hold. Not because they're not real only, it's worse. They don't make any sense. They cannot be used to express space. They can be used in a very narrow zone, but still there. They're not true. Otherwise, no bridge would be able to be constructed. No building would be constructed if the real world actually was X, Y, Z. You can use them in the model. But for every reality, there is a gazillion models. Think about the map in contrast to the globe. I think that actually deserves some precise thinking. And of course, this changes everything. If there is an infinity of meaning to get out of a sentence, how would you reach the understanding by asking questions? I think there is a saying, I don't know if somewhere in East Asia, many question leads to stupidity. Well, if you're looking for a definition or meaning, they could be detrimental. And today, I do it myself, I confess, we go too much into encyclopedias, into dictionaries, and we don't gain any understanding at all. It's just the opposite. I have a friend, a rather rounded fellow, partly from Finland. He said when he retired, he would learn all the encyclopedias by heart and thereby having meaning of everything. There's not end to think about how daft that is. Sorry. Thank God he never went on with this project. That would have been disastrous. What was he thinking? No, he wasn't thinking, because thinking would be impossible if meaning was stable. Poetry would be impossible. Art would be impossible. If a piece of art had one singular meaning, it wouldn't have any meaning at all. If you can define poetry, like they try to do in Dead Poets Society, there would be no poetry. He has a point there in that movie, although his call for authenticity, I think it's a bit skewed and actually leads to disaster in the movie. I do not agree with him there. I see, in a way, he was actually culpable. Because meaning is never stable. This young fellow that he tried to help could have stayed on in his education and still have access to an infinity of beauty, humor, aesthetics within that position. So the teacher himself was actually suffer from the illusion of the stability of meaning. I think one last thing is important to add, and that is that I mentioned, I think in the penultimate lecture from now, a saying from Wittgenstein's philosophical investigations. Once you come up to the roof or to the point, you don't need the ladder anymore. The instability, meaning, both these things, once you start to understand, will fall away as well. What you thought previously, before you come to this understanding, was a sort of stability, wasn't a stability. I think this makes the whole thing more acute. I would say, I would add language as a whole, not only poetry, literature and art. You will not understand other people if you believe in something that is stability of meaning, because there simply isn't such a thing. So there is nothing to have an illusion about. If you are disillusional and believe then there to be a mirage over there, maybe a grand bar with martinis and cocktails, and I think I would have a Manhattan on the rocks. That is better than to have the illusion of stability, because that's an illusion that is in itself an illusion. So there is not even an illusion, because there's nothing to have an illusion about. Maybe that last sentence didn't make any sense, or maybe it was helpful. I take it back, but think about jokes. How on earth would jokes work if meaning was absolutely stable? They wouldn't. There wouldn't be any jokes, because you would constantly explain them away. And I think humor and laughter are important for a whole array of aspects that we don't consider. One is, without laughter there is no understanding. It becomes more fun to understand, but it's not an optional, I would say. Humor and laughter are no longer optional after Gödel or quantum mechanics. In the Contradictio sunt complementa of Niels Bohr, it means that without contradiction, i.e. humor, laughter, other people that helps you to ease off and destabilize, okay? I use the word destabilize the illusion of stable meaning. This is what other people are so important for. And this whole idea of a causal array of the meaning is coming originally somewhere. Copy and origin. Something I will mention in the next lecture. I just realized that would be too long. Copy and original in the next lecture, or the lecture after that one. I say thank you very much. Have a very pleasant morning, afternoon, or wherever you are. And do laugh more. Have some jokes. Don't be overly serious. I can mention many years ago when I was studying English, we Swedes, we do have a particular problem with the distinction between V, like in victory, and W, like in want. And for training, I think the teacher came up with a couple of sentences where it would be even harder for me as a Swede to pronounce as a training. A bit cheek in tongue as well from his part. The sentence was, next week we will invite the vicar's wife. Even to this day I have great problem with that. And when I pronounced it, it became, next week we will invite the vicar's wife. And the teacher just shouted, yes, you bastard, and have her shot by morning, you SS guy. For my ears, I couldn't hear the difference. But for a trimmed ear, that would see an instability, and that would be sort of pointed in the direction one sound or another. So you see, instability is a necessity. I, who do not have that instability, simply do not understand. Well, I do understand today, but at some point I couldn't hear the difference. Difference can only be if you have this instability. Différence, as Jacques Derrida would have it. Well, I say thank you very much. Have a very pleasant afternoon. Bye-bye.